In today's video, we're going to learn the differences between jigs, reels, hornpipes, and strathspeys. Stay tuned. Well, hello everybody, I'm Matt Willis Bagpiper, and on this channel I make videos to make you a stronger and more confident piper. If you like this kind of content, please think about giving the video a like, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that bell icon to be notified of when I post new videos. I also teach Skype and online lessons if you want more personalized instruction, but more on that later. In the description below, there's a link to the PDF document I have here, so go ahead, print that out, put it on a tablet, have it in front of you so you can follow along. So today we're going to go through all of the main idioms of dance music available on the Highland bagpipes. And those are jigs, slip jigs, reels, both round or even and pointed, hornpipes, both round and even and pointed, and strathspeys. There are other forms of dance music available for the pipes, but these are the primary ones, so this is what we're going to focus on today. So to dive right in, we're going to start with the jig. The jig is one of my favorite of all of the various idioms, as they're often called, the different kind of categories, if you will, of dance tune for the Highland pipe. And a jig is a tune that's in 6/8 time. And 6/8 time is a compound time signature, which means the beat is subdivided into 3 pulses. If you're going to divide a note into 3, the beat, the note getting the beat, has to be a dotted note. It has to be dotted because you can't divide a non-dotted note into 3. You can only divide it into 2 or 4. But a dotted note, in this case, a dotted quarter note, can be divided into 3/8 notes. The quarter note itself is 2/8 notes, and the dot is the 3/8 note. Yes, the dot being 50%, again, longer than whatever note it's attached to. So in 6/8 time, there are absolutely 6/8 notes in it, but we're going to count the dotted quarter note as the beat, and the 8th notes will be the subdivided pulses within that beat. You can kind of think of a jig with the word jiggity. It kind of works out pretty well that way. Jiggity, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. But that's hard to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it's even easier to say jiggity. But that's the feel. The structure of most jigs is 16 bars per part, normally a part of 8 as shown here, repeated. So it's 8 bars repeated, a total of 16 bars, but it can be 16 unique bars of music. It's going to depend on your tune. But that's normally. I have seen jigs with just 4 bars repeated or 8 total bars. That's just fine. Each tune is going to have its own kind of structure, but the normal standard structure you're going to find for a jig is 8 bars repeated or 16 total bars per part of music. And I don't know if I've ever seen a 1-part jig. Pretty much any tune you're going to find is at least 2 parts, sometimes 4 or even 6. This one right here is Cork Hill, and we're going to take a look at part 1 of Cork Hill. We're going to turn on the metronome, and we're going to give it a go so you can hear what a jig should sound like. Now, I give a tempo range in here from around 100 beats per minute to over 130 beats per minute. We're going to have a go at Cork Hill here at 110 beats per minute, kind of right in the middle of the range of where jigs can sound nice and lively. So here will be the first part of Cork Hill at 110. There's an example of a jig for you. Let's move on now to slip jigs. Slip jigs are less common, and they are in 9/8. Now that sounds needlessly confusing now, but all it's saying is now there are 3 beats that are subdivided into 3. You can break down a compound time signature into how many beats it has by taking the top number and dividing it by 3. If the top number in a time signature is divisible by 3, but not 3 itself, that's how you know it's in compound time. So this really is 3 dotted quarter note time more than 9/8. Yes, there are absolutely 9/8 notes in this, but we're going to count 3 pulses of 3. That is the beat structure of the tune. 3 groups of 3. The tune structure tends to be about half the length of a jig in terms of bars. It's normally 4 bars per part repeated or 8 total bars. The tempo in a slip jig tends to be a little bit quicker than a regular jig. It could even be significantly faster than a regular jig. I'm not entirely certain why, but maybe has something to do with the dance. I am not a dancer in any way, so it may well have to do with the dance moves that are involved in a slip jig. And if you know, please comment below with your thoughts on why slip jigs tend to be faster than regular jigs. They just do. I'm going to bring the metronome up just a little bit for Drops of Brandy to 112. There are also 12/8 jigs known as slides. Now, as we've already kind of figured out, we take that top number 12, divide by 3, and we get 4. So that'd be 4 beats per measure with the beat divided into 3. And these tunes are known as slides. I don't know why. I couldn't think of any popular slides for the Highland bagpipe. Again, if you know a popular slide or one that you play, please comment below with what it is. I'd love to see it. We're not going to go over it today, but I did want to mention it. Moving on, we're going to go into reels. The reel falls into 2 different categories. We have the pointed reel and we have the round and even reel. We're going to start here with the pointed reel. So the beat structure of any reel, round or pointed, is that of a dance tune in a la breve. That is the C with the line through it, but that's the actual name, a la breve. Cut time, as it's often known, and what it means really is 2/2 time. It's 2 beats per measure with the half note getting the beat. But we're going to subdivide that note into 4. But in a pointed reel, the rhythm is primarily going to be a dotted eighth to a 16th, or at least that's how it's going to be written. We'll talk about this in just a minute. So it's going to be more da 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 what da 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 toot da 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 one da 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 toot da da da. But the tempo tends to be a little bit slower than it is for a jig because we are adding that extra subdivided beat. But they are quite lively tunes. The tune structure for a reel tends to be 8 bars per part, with 4 bars repeated being a very common structure of a reel. But there are other reels that have more parts than that. Mason's Apron, very popular reel, we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But that one is actually 8 bars repeated, which would technically be a hornpipe in many ways. But it's almost always written in the a la breve, cut time signature, and I often see it listed as a reel. So take it as you will. But the normal reel in Highland Scottish piping is going to be 8 bars per part or 4 bars repeated. Now the tempo for reel tends to be a little bit lower than for jigs or slip jigs, anywhere from 70 to 100 beats per minute, and the pointed ones tend to be a little bit slower than the round ones we'll talk about here in just a minute. So this example here is Kate Dalrymple. We're going to drop this metronome down to 74 and give this a go and hear what this pointed reel sounds like. So it's written in a very pointed dot cut. We have a dotted eighth to a 16th note. That'd be like 3/8 of a beat to 1/8 of the beat, 3/8 of the beat to 1/8 of the beat, kind of a 75-25% ratio if you think about it like that. But it's not quite that harsh unless the tempo is very, very slow. It tends to be actually played a little bit more like you see over here with this 6/8 rhythm, where where it's kind of a 2-to-1 rather than a 3-to-1 ratio. Now the downbeat might have a little bit more stress. We'll talk about that in just a little bit, but it's a little bit rounder than that, but it's not completely even. But as the tempo goes up, you're going to find it's going to need to round out. The short notes can only get so short. So as the tempo gets faster, it's that dotted note that's going to get a little bit shorter as it moves on. If you were to play this at a very slow tempo, then absolutely you could have a very pointed. But if you're going to play it quickly, it's going to get just a little bit more round. But that's the nature of the tune. You're supposed to want to move to the music, but that's the idea of a reel. It's a dance tune. It's not a march. So moving on to round and even reels. Now these are actually going to be played as they're written. They're relatively straightforward. Now it's actually going to be 4 even eighth notes per half note per beat. Tune structure also remains the same for the most part, with most tunes being 8 bars per part or 4 bars repeated. But again, there are reels written in this a la breve that have a different structure. It doesn't mean they're not a reel, just this is the normal way a reel is presented. And then there's the tempo. The tempo in a round reel tends to be a little bit faster, and I suspect that's because there's no notes that you have to really push, that the notes being even kind of just allow you to have the music flow out a little bit quicker. So that being said, for gravel walk here, we're going to go ahead and speed this up to 80 beats per minute, and we're going to have a go on this round reel, the gravel walk. Great tune right there, gravel walk. Moving on now to hornpipes. So hornpipes, very similar in many ways to reels, at least in terms of how we as pipers interpret and play them. One of the biggest differences is that these are written in 2/4 as opposed to a la breve or cut time. What does that mean for us? It means that we're now going to be subdividing the quarter note into 4, which adds a little bit more ink to the page. We're going to talk about why that might be a great idea or a terrible idea here in just a minute, but for now, we're going to just deal with the reality that hornpipes for Highland bagpipe music are written in 2/4, and we're going to have to deal with dotted 16ths and 30-second notes when we are dealing with pointed hornpipes. The tune structure. Now, this is where hornpipes differ. I mentioned it briefly in the reels, that hornpipes are 16 bars per part or 8 bars repeated. I assume this has to do with the dance that goes along with it. Now, again, I'm not a dancer. If you know specifically, please, again, I'd love to hear your comments below. But when you see a hornpipe in Highland bagpipe music, it is almost always 16 bars per part or 8 bars repeated, being the more normal way it is encountered. But the tempos tend to be right about the same for the same type. So we had a pointed reel that was between 70 and 100. We're now going to have a pointed hornpipe somewhere between 70 and 100. Before we start the Jolly Beggar Man, part 1 here as our hornpipe, I wanted to mention that the phrase structure of a hornpipe tends to be 2 bars per musical phrase. And a musical phrase is the smallest meaningful amount of music. In fact, I have a video up here about learning tunes with phrases where you can learn more about the idea and concept of phrases. But reels tend to have 1-bar phrases. Brum dito bito pepum. Brum ba 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 bum. If we're looking up here at gravel walk, whereas Jolly Beggar Man, bum da 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 ba da ba da 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 brum, ba ba da da ha dum da ba dum dee da bum. Just the idea tends to be a little bit longer before it comes to a meaningful conclusion, if you will. But again, I talk more about that in that other video. Let's keep going with this. The Jolly Beggar Man at 74, part 1. And as before, when it comes to the feel of the tune, we can see here I have the first phrase of Jolly Beggar Man written out as it is in 2/4 with a very pointed, very stilted way of playing it if you were to play it exactly as written, versus one in 6/8. The 6/8 time signature is inherently just a little bouncier because of the 2-to-1 nature of the ratios versus a 3-to-1 nature of the ratios in the 2/4. So if we look at that, these are basically played the same way. Bum bum ba-dum 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 ba-dum. If you're really going to try to play that pointed one as written right here, it'd be something more like bum da 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 da. And I don't know, maybe there's pipers that play it that way, but I don't think it's nearly as interesting. Now, if you did want to give a little bit more emphasis, a little bit more pulse on that first note, not a problem. You can go ahead and do that. As I say over here, that would best be indicated with kind of an accent mark rather than rewriting the music to have some notes like double dotted or something like that, because it's a nuance. It's a little bit more. It shouldn't be so much more that it's like ba bum ba dum ba da ba dum ba dum ba da ba da. You don't want to throw the dancer off of the dance. You don't want to take the audience out of the moment. Ba dum ba dum ba da ba dum ba dum ba da da dum. That's a little bit more reasonable in what you might want to hold a note for. That said, don't worry about overly accenting anything until you can play the tune well, reliably, well-graced, all the embellishments in place, and only at the end do we want to add the sprinkles of something like that interpretation, that kind of accenting to the music. That's my opinion. Make the cake before you ice it. Round and even hornpipes. Now this is going to be very similar again to the round and even reels with 2 beats per bar and each of those beats subdivided into 4, But as with the other hornpipe, it's going to be in 2/4. So you can see in this tune right here, we have an awful lot of 16th notes, which again is fine. It's just a little bit more ink on the page, which can make you a little bit more nervous, but it is what it is. So again, there's 16 bars per part, or 8 bars repeated for a hornpipe. And then we have the tempo range again. It's typically maybe just a little bit faster than a pointed hornpipe, but it doesn't have to be. They tend to be a little bit quicker. The Queen of Rushes, part 1, right here as a round hornpipe. Now, I've already addressed many of these points, but just to kind of sum up again, the differences between reels and hornpipes, again, I have no doubt they're quite different from a dance background, but for a performer's background, they feel very, very similar. They're both dance tunes with 2 beats per bar, subdivided into 4, either pointed or not. The biggest difference is in how they're written. You have 2/2 versus 2/4. The 2/2, the half note being divided into 4, just gives you less ink. If we look at this line of the Mason's Apron right here, we can see in line 1 how I normally see it written in this a la breve cut time. You can see that there's 1/8 notes and quarter notes. That, to my eyes, is much easier to read than the one underneath it, which is exactly the same music. If these were played at the same tempo, you would not be able to tell which was which. But 16th notes just look harder. And then, again, look at the Jolly Beggar Man right here. It is a hornpipe, and you can see how it is written and how it's written in the last page. But you see down here, if we wrote it in a la breve, it'd be, again, perhaps a little bit easier to read. Now, it's neither here or there. It is what it is now. Hornpipes are written in 2/4. Reels are written in 2/2. But I wanted to point out the difference. Very similar, but they do have their differences. And last but not least for today's video, strathspeys. Now, these are dance tunes written in common time, but common time is 4/4. For us pipers, we use 4/4 as a time signature, the actual 4 over the number 4, to mean 4/4 marches typically. When you see the C, that's an indicator that you're looking at a strathspey. Strathspeys are both lively and snappy. The tune structure, strathspeys tend to be 8 bars per part or 4 bars repeated. And the tempo range is anywhere from around 100 to 120. Given the very pointed nature of this, if you start going too quick, the pointing just kind of goes away. So before we talk about the feel and the writing of strathspeys, I'm going to go ahead and give the first part of Molly Connell a go. Great tune composed by James Work at 107. But when it comes to strathspeys, they are written in a normal dotted 4/4 or common time rhythm. But interestingly enough, they are more pointed than that. But they're not so pointed as to need to be double dotted and double cut when it comes to the 8ths and 16ths. Or in that case, double dotted 8ths and 32nds. That's too harsh. It's really more of a 5/6 of the beat to 1/6 of a beat. And I've played around with this on a computer quite a lot. I've even put up a digital strathspey, and there'll be a link up here to the tune, Crowded Isolation. And in that tune, I use the math of 5/6 of the beat to 1/6 of the beat to make the basic tune structure. But here you can see, it would be a nightmare to actually write it out that way. To actually write out 5/6 of a beat, you would have to use a compound time signature because 6 is divisible by 3. So ultimately, you would need to have something in compound time to allow you to even do it. So in 12/8, you can see the first beat would be a dotted quarter note into a dotted 8th note tied to an 8th note to a 16th note. In this case, the 16th notes are actually 1/6 of a beat. So to show 5/6 of the beat, this is the only way I could mathematically wrap my brain around it. So while this is how we play it, you can see why we don't write it that way. That's just a mess. It would be nearly impossible to read this 12/8 tune right here. But what I do want to point out is this Strathspey triplet right here. So you can see in the example of the tune up here, as well as in this example right here, you see 3 notes with the number 3 underneath. That is a very common way to write the Strathspey triplet. So the thing with the Strathspey triplet is that while they're written often like this and sometimes like this, they're played like that. What? The Strathspey triplet is anything but a triplet. A normal triplet in traditional non-bagpipe music is 3 notes evenly over 1 beat. Triplet, triplet, da-da-da-da-da-da. A Strathspey triplet is da-da-dum, 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 da-da-dum. It's a sixth of a beat to a sixth of the beat to 2/3 of a beat. Da-da-dum. In fact, if you were to even to subdivide it, da-da-dum, da-da-dum, you can see that the upbeat actually happens while you are already, on this case, on that 3rd note, on that C. Ba-da-dum, F-E-C, 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 da-da-dum, 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 to take that subdivided beat out. This is how they're written more often in modern pipe music with 2/16 to an 8, and that's much closer to the proper rhythm. But that's indicating like a 25, 50% relationship, where it's really a, well, 1/6, 1/6, 2/3 relationship. So, yeah, 18.5 to 18.5 to 66 point. I don't know. Let's not do fractions in this case. So there's a little bit on Strathspey triplets, a rather unusual but super cool part of Strathspeys. I love the sound of a Strathspey triplet in the music, but understand that while they might be written evenly for those that have some musical background, they are not played that way. Not when it comes to a Strathspey. You see that C? Interpret it differently. This is not intended to be how to go about learning these tunes per se. This is about identifying what they are. So many people are not aware of what a jig is versus a slip jig versus a reel versus a hornpipe versus a Strathspey. And I hope this, well, primer, if you will, gave you a bit of an insight as to the different idioms, how they sound, and how you can identify them, and what the kind of features are in each of them. Their tempos, their structures, their subdivisions, that kind of stuff I think can go a long way to helping you understand the music. Not everyone had the opportunity to grow up listening to this kind of music and have it like really kind of in their head and know just inherently what a jig is, inherently what a reel is, and that's fine. I wanted to give you some tools to identify them, and understanding how they're built is, I think, a critical step in the process of beginning to learn this great, great music. Well, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you got something out of the video, and if you did, please think about giving it a like, subscribing to the channel, and commenting below with any thoughts you might have. I also have a Patreon where as little as $1 a month goes a really long way to helping support the channel. You'll see names scrolling up of fine folks like Miss Carrie Tresek. Thank you so much, Carrie. These people often get early access to videos and other perks, so head over to my Patreon and help support the channel. I also teach Skype and online lessons. Please head over to www.commandyourbagpipe.com or email me at the address you see here, and we'll get you going. I'm working with folks from all over the planet, and I hope to work with you soon. I also have a line of Command Your Bagpipe merchandise with things like t-shirts and mugs and hats, so go check out that merch. Let the world know that you command your bagpipe. All right, everybody, I'm Matt Willis, and until next time, cheers.